So those types of things, you can say, oh, it's fantasy. Oh, well, you need an answer for that. Okay, well, magic. But that can only go so far before you start thinking, like, the world actually starts breaking down. For example, that terrible D&D movie way back in the day.
Is that the one with the Wayans brothers?
I have no idea. Maybe I don't know.
Because I saw something in the theaters, and
the CGI is awful. In a time when it really shouldn't.
Was this like 20 years ago?
I don't think maybe it was 20 years ago.
I do remember seeing a D&D movie in the theaters.
Yeah, then that probably
a
is
long time ago, and I think one of the Wayans was in it, but I'm not sure.
I want to say that it may have been based off Dragonlance. I don't know. I'm not 100%. The point is this, though. One thing that I thought they got right in that movie was mages ruled everything. Mages were the nobility. They, the Council of Mages, those were the top dogs. They had the cool fucking towers. They had all the power politically. They were the aristocracy. And, we had been playing D&D for a long time. And people were thinking, man, why is that? It made complete sense. It's because the motherfuckers have magic. Of course they're going to rule everything. That's one thing that actually made that world kind of make sense. Magic is everywhere. It's high fantasy. Only a select few people can actually use the magic because it takes study, because if you fuck it up, then you get fucked up, because they police themselves, because they obviously know that we don't want everybody to have magic, because that is literally our source of power. And then there's something about dragons, which is tropey and shit. But also dragons should be smart, in my opinion. That's just me. But I think they got it right in that movie, which is why I could watch it a few times.
Yeah, wizards tend to get really, really powerful at higher levels in D&D.
Well, it depends on you're totally right, first of all. But it depends on the edition. In second ed, it was one of those things where it's completely unbalanced. And 3.5 and whatnot, there's a point where you're taking the fighter class or any martial class, and you just need to take a prestige class, which that's a whole conversation as to what a PRC, a prestige class, is. But essentially what it is you take a class, once you've gotten up to like 10th level as a martial character, you take a class that then gives you basically magic, or it makes you better as a fighter. You kind of have magic. There's a specific book called the Tome of Nine Swords, or the Book of Nine Swords, that apparently did a lot to balance the game. But 3.0 and 3.5, those third edition games are just not balanced at all. If you're we're gonna play a game, cool. What level? 5th. We'll pick a fighter. What level? 18th. You want a wizard or something that has some sort of spell casting ability. Yeah, for sure. Anyways, so getting into Dungeons and Dragons, there's a plethora of different worlds, that follow their own rules. Planescape, of course, I have a huge heart on for Planescape, and one of the reasons that I like it so much is because they actually go full bore fantasy, and they'll say things like, each plane of existence is its own universe. Like, think about how big the universe is. Think about how long it's been around. We got deep time. We got all kinds of shit that only Daniel knows. And the multiverse is vast. And you'll have things like the plane of shadow. And the entire plane is shadowed and has shadow creatures, and it's connected to the negative energy plane, which is connected to the knee bone, which is connected to the foot bone. But there's rules based in that plane. So people might say, cutters, or people that are adventurers because they cut shit, because they're murder hobos, might say, let's go to the plane of shadow. And anyone who is a planer, or who, kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy style, who has been around in the planes, is like, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Why? Because it's very similar to saying something like this. Hey guys, get your swords and, bows and arrows, let's go to space. It's like you're going to die immediately. Like, that's what's going to happen. Why? Because it's all about world building, and you have to uphold that idea of there are places that work a certain way, and that's why all these other things work. Now, how does that connect to deep time? Daniel. Oh, really quick. Brian Walters. What's up, man? We're talking about deep time, which is an actual thing, and how it connects to writing stories and specifically world building. And I've been shitting all over everything. All right. So, continue, please. I'm going to get a beer. Talk to the masses.
Deep time is the various fields involved with deep time, such as astronomy, geology, and biology, give you a foundation for what you could actually write in terms of your world's backstory. And I mean, it could give you some inspiration. Going on with the example I gave earlier of, say, true polar forests. These were biomes that don't exist now, but actually did exist then, that you could actually put into a story that would be unique and have some basis in reality. And it also allows you to, I guess, have some restrictions in terms of what is not in your story. And oftentimes that is a really, really important part. It's not just what you put in your story, but what you subtract. And I'll actually give you an example from Deep Time. If you can think of what a world would be like without flowering plants, this is any broadleaf tree, any grass or weed, anything that has flower or produces flowering pollen, they're called angiosperms. There was a point in time in our history where those did not exist, or they either didn't exist or they were very, very much confined to a niche in terms of the overall flora of a world. And so you had all of these animals that were forced to subsist on trees and plants that were not flowering plants. It also meant that stuff produced commonly by flowering plants, mainly fruits and other plant matter that you commonly find, were just not there. And so you had all of these animals that had to make do with evergreen and ferns. And it would have meant that there was a very different environment than what you find now, aside from, say, some of the colder forests that are dominated by evergreens. And so that's just one example. And there's a lot of resources that can tell you or can inform you about these periods of time in Earth's history, or these places in Earth's history that were very interesting. I spent many, many hours reading about them. I find them very fascinating for their own right. I found them fascinating before I ever thought about world building or DreadLore. I spent probably too much time on them. Anyways, but they are things to think about. And I didn't get a chance to get into this, but I would also urge people who are potentially world building to think about what happens when, say, their character or whoever looks up, and what do they see in the sky? They could see just some common assortment of stars randomly placed, as you would probably expect to find if it was some other world in a similar environment to ours. But you can actually look up other astronomical phenomena that might be seen in your world that we don't see because we're just not close enough. and you'd be getting your inspiration from worlds that we find, or from places that we find out there today. And you're back.
I'm back. I are back.
Yeah.
Walters gives us the metal sign. Indeed. Need another cough drop?
Yeah.
Bam. It's a lot of talking. All right. So, take a look at this really quick. So, summary. What did you go over?
I went over I went over astronomical phenomena that what I wanted to get into. I kind of got into it while you were away getting beer, but one of the things that I wanted to get into, and I don't think is not something that's given enough attention, is what happens. What do your characters see when they look up?
That's interesting.
Do they see stars? Are there other wandering stars, which is what we thought planets were before we figured out otherwise? Does the main star that this planet presumably orbits around look the same? Are there any astronomical phenomena that we don't see, but could see if we were a bit closer to it in some detail? And this actually gets to something that I think would be really nice to think about, and that is the concept of cycles that have an impact on your actual storyline.
Like what?
Presumably, you'd have seasons. You could have astronomical phenomena that occur, like say R Halley's Comet that shows up once every 76 years.
I saw that, by the way.
Yeah, I did.
I did.
And there are other possible cycles too. So our sun experiences sunspot cycles of around 11 years, where it alternates between periods of being very active and being not so active. It wasn't something that was well understood in pre-modern times because there wasn't very good ways to just stare directly at the sun and without the proper equipment.
Right. So someone might be asking, "Oh, that's cool, that level of detail. Knowing about like, is the sun red or is it yellow?" For instance, in DreadLore, it's a reddish color because the world is old and the sun is old. That's one of the ideas. Also, we like that idea of...
And it's possible for a sun to be redder just because it's a different type of star.
Right, so it's burning something else, or it's burning cooler or hotter, or whatever.
It would
be cooler, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would presumably
Or there's something other, in the atmosphere that's...
It would be cooler, and it could also be older.
So in DreadLore, it's older. That's one of the ideas. As you move through the ages of DreadLore, in the first age, the sun is bright white. I mean, it's always bright, but it's bright white. But towards the end, it's this sullen red. And the geography has changed slightly. There's more chaotic weather. There's tremors. Certain places in the continent, certain places in the world you just don't really go. And the flora and fauna actually changes in a fantastic way when the world Craster is new. Everything's kind of bigger and more vibrant, and then when it's old, things are more violent and it's not that they're smaller. It's just that they've weathered. They're more adapted, I should say. So there's that fantastic element, but there's also this idea of certain species and whatnot just aren't there anymore. For example, the playable races of the Paragons really aren't there. And one of the things that I was talking about when I was editing the bestiary was that the Paragons just kind of die out, right? Maybe because the world isn't new, whatever that spark is has started to fade. But an actual like physical reason for that is because the world is aging, and once it gets to a certain point, there are no more stars in the sky. And the paragons, this is like deep lore in DreadLore. It's the deep time of DreadLore. Without those stars, it actually means that kind of their life force is fading. So there's that fantastic element. All of that aside, someone might say, why do you need that level of detail? Other than the fact that it's there. You know, like in Halo, you can't go off that cliff because you just can't. That's not where the game is. Just accept the fact that there's a painted background that looks really cool. Right? The thing is this. If you have the level of detail of this is what you see when you look up. You're seeing stars, or you're seeing spaceships that are far enough away that they look like stars, or whatever. I have a cough drop. Here, let me. It's so intense. Why can't I hold something in my mouth like a chipmunk?
Because you don't have a
Speak up, they can't hear you.
You don't have a cheek pouch.
Anyway, the thing is, if you as a game creator, as a world builder, have set that up, literally, it's up there, you know how it works, that determines a lot of shit. And it means, actually, you don't have to work as hard. Because instead of being like, crap, so they want to go to the North Country, which everybody thinks is going to be cold because it's always cold in the North for some reason everywhere, right? Okay, well, what would it be? Okay, well, let's call it a monarchy, and I don't know what it should be. And you have to create everything. If you actually know the seasons, and you know generally the general geography of, let's say, your continent, you can make a pretty fucking good guess what's there. Because you can say, oh, there's a planet off of the United States, and I'm about ready to be schooled in some geography. I'm sitting next to a geographer or someone who majored in geography. You know, there's such a thing as a mountain range that goes up, and on one side of it, it's going to have certain kind of geography, and on the other side, maybe something totally different. Maybe to the south, it's a huge fucking desert.
And I will also add.
But it's not arbitrary, is my point.
No, it isn't. And you, when speaking about mountains, the interesting thing about mountains is if you have a mountain range and what's known as an altiplano type climate.
Altiplano?
Altiplano. It is what you find in the Andes.
Altitude planar, as in a plateau, a plain? Okay.
Yeah.
A high altitude plateau, plain.
Yeah, you find it in Bolivia and Peru and...
Oh yeah, Peru again.
Yeah, it outside of Tibet, that's the highest continuous high elevation area on Earth. But the Altiplano, unlike Tibet, is somewhat lower, and so it's a little more amenable to human habitation. And you have that's where the not the Aztec, but the Inca were located.
In Tibet?
No, not Tibet.
Oh, Peru.
In Peru and Bolivia.
Right.
And but my point is, it's much colder, but because much of it is in the tropics, the weather patterns are erratic, and a lot of them don't have really well-defined seasons at all.
And so what you can do is, and what you really should do, and that's to tie us into our next actual point, which is real game examples. How can you decide all this shit, right? Because I've definitely drawn maps in detail because I get all artistic, and this map looks cool as shit. I'm like, I need some rivers in there. I'm put a little swamp because you need witches, and witches are always in swamps, right? You know, and you have like the volcano region, it's over here. And then there's always a sea next to the volcano region. So it has like the boiling acidic sea because that somehow makes sense, I guess. Right? And then the north is cold because the north is always cold. The south, obviously, is deserts. and everyone is, everyone's based out of like something out of like Africa, and everyone in the north is out of like a Conan movie. This is like every fantasy, right? What's really good is to actually look at the world and to say, holy shit, what does Peru look like? What is the geography, and why is it that way? The reason it's that way is not because, I would say, it's not like humans made it that way, although we have done plenty to fuck around with the environment. It's natural.
Yeah, and
as in shit naturally happens that way.
To talk about Latin America in general, this is actually interesting in terms of, I guess, world building. If you are an American and you've never been there or studied the region in detail, one of the things that stands out to me when I look at the region is how many of that area's main settlements are actually built much, much higher up than anything that we find normally in the United States. For instance, if you start with Mexico City, that area it's 2,000 feet higher than Denver, at least.
Damn, I didn't know that. I knew it was mountainous.
Yeah, but Denver's a mile-high city. Mexico City is a mile-and-a-half-high city.
Shit.
But it doesn't stop there. With Bogota, you're looking at 8,000 feet, which is even higher. And in Quito, you're looking at 9,000 feet.
Where is Quito?
It's the capital of Ecuador.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and you're looking at an area. It's on the equator too, and it's a solid 9,000 feet up in the air. Well, not in the air, but
just hanging.
Yeah, and even areas
that cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool enough that oftentimes you'd need a jacket or something like that. And of course, there's also mountainous areas adjacent that are actually...
So you have a place that's incredibly cool because it's so high.
Because it's so high.
But it's got a fuckload of sun.
Yes.
Because it's on the equator.
It's because... I think the Andes is the highest... It's the area of highest solar flux in the world.
Solar flux.
In other words, you're just getting more sun.
Oh, okay.
Because, in some respects, just because of it's being so high and you're above a lot of the atmosphere. I don't exactly know how that works. But even areas that you wouldn't expect to be high. So, for example, Sao Paulo. If you look at a map.
That's in Brazil, yeah.
Yeah, but if you look at a map.
Like southern Brazil, southeast?
Yeah, if you look at a map, it's right next to the coast. And you think, well, yeah.
Map.
It's right next to the coast. So it should be fairly low lying, right? You'd think like Miami. No, it's 2,000 feet up because...
Dang.
It's 2,000 feet up because it's on a cliff, more or less. You have this plateau that goes straight up to the coast and then this extremely sharp drop, and then a few miles later you hit the sea.
Cameron said hello.
Oh, hi, Cameron.
He says, yo, fools. What's up? What's up, man? We're talking about world building, which you would obviously... Cameron is an author. Everyone on here knows. Brian's here. Megan's here. Brian Walters. Maybe someone else. I don't know. But Cameron's an author. He world builds all the time. He helped build the southern part of the lower continent of DreadLore. And... he's helping me with the map. I'll actually show you some of the maps. They're pretty fucking cool.
Sure.
Yeah.